Portland, Oregon, December 2024. The rain hammered against the kitchen window of the two-bedroom apartment on Morrison Street, each drop a percussion note in the symphony of Autumn Brennan's unraveling life. She stood at the counter, still in her nurse's scrubs from the graveyard shift at Providence Hospital, staring at the envelope that had arrived in the afternoon mail. The return address read Whitmore and Associates Attorneys at Law, Birchwood Falls, Washington. Her hands trembled as she turned it over. 15 years. 15 years since she'd heard that town's name spoken aloud. 15 years since she'd driven away in a rusted Honda with everything she owned stuffed into 2 garbage bags, her belly swollen with a child whose father had vanished like morning fog. The envelope felt heavy. Not the weight of paper, but the gravity of choices made long ago, consequences that had compounded like interest on an unpaid debt. Nola emerged from her bedroom backpack slung over one shoulder. Dark hair pulled into a messy bun. 14 years old and already taller than Autumn, with eyes that saw too much for someone who should still believe the world was fundamentally kind. "Mom, you okay? You've been standing there for like 10 minutes. Autumn's finger slid under the envelope flap, tearing through the seal. Inside, a single sheet of legal letterhead, a brass key wrapped in tissue paper, and a smaller envelope addressed in handwriting she recognized immediately. Her mother's careful script, each letter formed with the precision of someone who believed presentation mattered more than substance. The lawyer's letter was brief, professional, cold. "Dear Ms. Brennan, we regret to inform you that your mother, Vivian Brennan, has been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Life expectancy 2 to 3 months. She has requested your presence at the family home, 47 Birchwood Lane, Birchwood Falls, Washington. Enclosed is a key to the property and a personal letter. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience." The smaller envelope fell from her shaking hands, landing on the linoleum with a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet kitchen. Nola bent to retrieve it, her eyes scanning her mother's face with the practiced concern of a child who'd learned early to read adult distress signals. "What is it?" Autumn's throat closed. She took the envelope from her daughter's outstretched hand and opened it, pulling out a single page covered in her mother's handwriting. The words blurred through sudden tears. "Autumn, my dear child, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know what your father and I did was unforgivable. But I am dying, and before I go, you need to know the truth. Do not sell the house. Please, whatever you do, do not sell it to anyone, especially not to Callahan Thorne. Find the blue wool coat, the one I knitted for you when you were 15. It will lead you to what I couldn't protect all those years ago. I am so sorry. I have been sorry every day for 15 years. Your mother, Vivian." The room tilted. Autumn gripped the counter's edge, her knuckles whitening. "Mom, what's wrong? Who's Vivian?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with all the stories Autumn had never told, all the history she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself it had happened to someone else. "My mother. Your grandmother. She wants to see me." Nola's eyes widened. In 14 years, she'd never met her maternal grandparents. Had been told only the barest outline. "They didn't approve of your father. They asked us to leave. We haven't spoken since." The truth was uglier. The truth was a 15-year-old girl standing in her childhood living room, hands clasped over her barely showing belly, while her father's face turned the color of old brick, and her mother stood silent at the kitchen window, back turned, shoulders rigid. The truth was a suitcase packed in 20 minutes, while her father sat in his recliner drinking whiskey straight from the bottle, and her mother scrubbed already clean counters with furious mechanical precision. The truth was walking out into a September evening with nowhere to go, no money, no plan, just the certainty that she would survive because the alternative was unthinkable. "She's dying." Autumn nodded, unable to speak past the obstruction in her throat. 15 years of silence, and now this, a deathbed reconciliation. The coward's exit, the easy absolution. Show up, whisper forgiveness, watch the old woman slip away into whatever came next, conscience clear. Except it wouldn't be clear. Nothing about Vivian Brennan had ever been simple. Nola moved closer, her hand finding Autumn's arm. Are you going to go? I don't know. The second envelope arrived the next morning, this one from Columbia Bank. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. 60 days to pay $15,000 or lose the apartment. Autumn read it 3 times each pass, making the words more real and more impossible. She'd been careful. So careful. Working double shifts, picking up overtime, buying generic everything, saying no to Nola's requests for new clothes, for school trips, for the small luxuries other kids took for granted. But 6 months ago, the hospital had laid off 30 nurses. She'd been unemployed for 4 months before finding this new position at half her old salary. The savings had evaporated, the credit cards were maxed, and now this. $15,000. The amount might as well have been $15 million. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the green button. Autumn Brennan. The voice was smooth, confident male, a voice she'd spent 15 years trying to forget. Who is this? It's Callahan Thorne. I heard about your mother. I'm very sorry. Her entire body went cold. Cal, the boy who'd whispered promises in the dark, the boy who'd said he loved her, the boy who'd vanished the day after she told him she was pregnant, leaving nothing but a blocked number and a Facebook relationship status that changed from in a relationship to single while she was still crying into her pillow. How did you get this number? Birchwood Falls is a small town, Autumn. Word travels. I wanted to reach out because I understand Vivian is leaving you the house on Birchwood Lane. Her hand tightened on the phone. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. I'd like to make you an offer. $80,000 cash. We can close in 7 days. $80,000. More than enough to save the apartment. Enough to pay off the credit cards. Enough to breathe. Why would you want that house? It's falling apart. A pause. I'm developing that area. The house is in the way of my plans. I'm willing to pay above market value for a quick sale. Everything in her body screamed warning. Cal had never done anything that didn't benefit Cal. Not when he was 18 and captain of the football team. Not now when he was apparently wealthy enough to throw around $80,000 on a condemned Victorian. I need time to think. Of course, but don't take too long. The offer expires in 1 week. The line went dead. Autumn stood in the kitchen, phone still pressed to her ear, while her daughter ate cereal at the table and the rain continued its relentless assault on the window. The foreclosure notice lay on the counter next to her mother's letter. 2 paths diverging, both leading to places she didn't want to go. That night, after Nola was asleep, Autumn pulled out her laptop and searched for Callahan Thorne. The results filled her screen. CEO of Thorne Development Corporation, net worth estimated at $20 million, multiple luxury housing projects across Washington state. A photograph showed him in a tailored suit, silver streaks in his dark hair, the same crooked smile that had once made her 15-year-old heart stutter. She clicked through to the company website. Current projects. One caught her eye, Silverstone Heights. Luxury homes starting at $1.5 million. Location Birchwood Falls, Washington. The artist's rendering showed massive houses arranged along winding streets, professionally landscaped yards, a clubhouse, tennis courts. And in the corner of the image, if you looked closely, you could see the outline of an old Victorian house. Her house, right in the middle of where the main entrance was supposed to be. Cal didn't just want the house. He needed it. The question was why. Saturday morning, Autumn loaded 2 suitcases into the trunk of her 10-year-old Civic while Nola secured her backpack in the passenger seat. 4 hours to Birchwood Falls. 4 hours to drive back into a past she'd worked so hard to escape. The highway stretched north through rain-soaked farmland and dense forests. Nola stared out the window, earbuds in, lost in whatever music teenagers listened to now. Autumn kept both hands on the wheel and tried not to think about the last time she'd made this drive, 16 years old postpartum with a 2-week-old infant in a borrowed car seat and $300 in cash from the woman who ran Haven House. "Mom!" Autumn glanced over. Nola had pulled out one earbud. "Tell me about Birchwood Falls. What was it like growing up there? Where to start? The Friday night football games where the entire town turned out. The summer festivals with funnel cakes and fireworks. The way everyone knew everyone, which felt cozy until it felt suffocating. The Christmas morning when she was 8 and woke up to find a bicycle with a red bow in the living room. Her mother smiling, her father reading the paper and pretending not to watch her face. It was beautiful, small, the kind of place where people waved at each other from their porches. Then why did you leave? Because sometimes beautiful places have ugly secrets. Nola absorbed this, her young face serious. Is Cal from there, my father? Autumn had told her years ago. Age 8 when Nola started asking why she didn't have a dad like the other kids. The truth simplified, your father was young. He wasn't ready. He left before you were born. Not his fault, not yours, just how things happen sometimes. She'd never mentioned his name, never shown Nola a picture, never explained that he'd targeted her specifically, that their whole relationship had been calculated, that she'd been a means to an end. She hadn't understood until it was too late. Yes, he was the quarterback. I was the sophomore who worked at the coffee shop on Main Street. He said I was pretty, said he loved me. I believed him. Did you love him? I thought I did, but I was 15. I didn't know what love was. Do you know now? Autumn reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. Yes, I know now. They crossed the Birchwood Falls city limit at 3 in the afternoon. Population 4, 200, the sign announced. Home of the Birchwood Warriors. Nothing had changed. The same gas station with the faded awning. The same mom-and-pop grocery. The same stoplight that took forever to cycle from red to green. Birchwood Lane sat on the north edge of town where the houses grew larger and the lots stretched wider. Old money, or what passed for old money in a place like this. Her father had been an accountant at the lumber mill. Her mother had run the PTA and organized church bake sales. They'd been respectable, solid, the kind of people who kept their lawn mowed and their shutters painted and their daughter's teenage pregnancy hidden until it couldn't be hidden anymore. Number 47 came into view and Autumn's foot found the brake without conscious thought. The house looked like something from a horror movie. A Victorian painted lady that had once been the jewel of the street, now rotting from the inside out. The wraparound porch sagged. Windows were boarded with plywood that had warped and split. The garden that had been her mother's pride, 50 rose bushes pruned and fertilized with obsessive care, was now a tangle of dead branches and choked earth. But there on the second-floor balcony hung a single item of clothing, a blue wool coat, faded to almost gray, the hem unraveling, but unmistakable. The coat her mother had spent 3 months knitting when Autumn was 15. The coat she'd left behind the night she was thrown out because her mother had stood at that very balcony and said, "Leave it. It doesn't belong to you anymore." Nola leaned forward, staring. "Mom, is that our house?" "It was, once." "It looks abandoned." "It is, mostly." They climbed out into cold December air that smelled of pine and rot. The front gate hung crooked on one hinge. The walkway was buckled and broken. Autumn picked her way to the porch steps, testing each one before putting her full weight down. The wood groaned but held. The front door stood slightly ajar. "Hello, Mom. Are you here?" Her voice echoed through the empty house. No answer. She pushed the door wider, revealing a hallway choked with garbage bags, old newspapers, cardboard boxes. The wallpaper her mother had hung in 1998, cream with tiny blue flowers peeled in long strips. The hardwood floor was scuffed and stained, a shuffle of movement from deeper inside. Autumn's heart hammered. Nola pressed close to her side. A figure emerged from what had been the living room. Thin, so thin the bones stood out in sharp relief beneath papery skin, white hair hanging in limp strands, wearing the blue wool coat like a robe, sleeves too long, hem dragging. "Autumn." Vivian Brennan was 67 years old but looked 85. Cancer had hollowed her out, leaving only the architecture of the woman she'd been. Her eyes, though. Her eyes were the same. Brown, flecked with gold, sharp and assessing, and full of a grief so profound it was almost tangible. You came. Autumn couldn't move, couldn't speak. 15 years collapsed into nothing. She was standing in this same hallway, 15 years old, suitcase in hand, while her mother refused to turn around, refused to look, refused to acknowledge what was happening. This is Nola, your granddaughter. Nola stepped forward, brave in the way children are when adults falter. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Vivian's face crumpled. She reached out with a trembling hand, stopped just short of touching Nola's cheek as if afraid permission hadn't been granted. You're beautiful. You look just like your mother did at your age. Tears tracked down the old woman's face, catching in the deep lines bracketing her mouth. Can we come in? Vivian stepped back, gesturing. Of course. I'm sorry, the house is... I haven't been able to keep up with it since your father died, since I got sick. The living room was worse than the hallway, piles of newspapers dated back years, empty food containers, a coating of dust thick enough to write in. But in the center, a single armchair, relatively clean, with a small table beside it holding a glass of water and a bottle of pills. This was where her mother had been living. In this one chair, in this one room, waiting. Nola's hand found Autumn's and squeezed. When did Dad die? 8 years ago. Heart attack. He was sitting right there watching his crime shows. I found him when I brought him his dinner. Doctor said it was fast, massive. He didn't suffer. 8 years. Her father had been dead for 8 years and she hadn't known. Hadn't been invited to the funeral. Hadn't even seen an obituary because she'd stopped looking up Birchwood Falls news the day she left. Why didn't anyone tell me? Vivian sank into her chair, suddenly looking exhausted. There was no funeral, no obituary. I couldn't afford it. By then we'd lost everything, the savings, the retirement. Your father drank after you left, lost his job. We took out a second mortgage, then a third. When he died, we owed more on this house than it was worth. The room spun. Autumn reached for the wall to steady herself. You've been living here alone for 8 years in this condition. I was waiting. I knew you'd come back, eventually. I had to be here when you did. A sound from the doorway made them all turn. A man stood there, tall, weathered, maybe late 60s, wearing work boots and a flannel jacket. He held a battery-powered lantern and a toolbox. Viv, I brought the generator like you asked. Didn't know you had company. His eyes found Autumn and recognition flickered across his face. Autumn Brennan. My God, you're all grown up. She searched her memory, found him. Weston Marlowe. West, the carpenter who'd lived next door for as long as she could remember. The man who'd always had a kind word, who'd fixed her bike when the chain came off, who'd helped her father build the deck in the backyard. Mr. Marlowe, it's good to see you. He set down his toolbox and approached, hand extended. His grip was warm, calloused, steady. I'm so glad you came. Your mother's been hoping. Vivian's face colored. West has been very kind, bringing me groceries, making sure I have my medications. I don't know what I would have done without him. Did you get my letter? Autumn pulled the envelope from her purse, the one about the blue coat. Yes, did you find it? It's hanging on the balcony. I put it there every week. Wash it, hang it, take it down, wash it again. It was the only thing I had left of you, the only way I could remember. Nola moved to the window, staring out at the ruined garden. West busied himself with the generator, giving them the illusion of privacy. Mom, I need to understand. Why now? Why after 15 years? Vivian's hands twisted in her lap, the blue wool coat bunching under her fingers. Because I'm dying. The doctors say 2 months, maybe 3. And I can't die with this secret. I can't die knowing I failed you twice, once when I let your father throw you out, and again when I didn't protect what belonged to you. What are you talking about? The house, the land, everything Callahan Thorne wants. It's not mine to give him. It's yours. It's always been yours. Autumn shook her head. I don't understand. Vivian pushed herself up from the chair with visible effort. "Come with me. I need to show you something." They followed her through the debris-choked hallway to the kitchen. West trailed behind with the lantern illuminating their path. The kitchen was marginally better than the living room, though the appliances hadn't worked in years. And the sink overflowed with unwashed dishes. Vivian pointed to the floor. "There, that cabinet. West, can you help me move it?" Together they shoved the heavy piece aside, revealing a trapdoor cut into the floorboards. Vivian produced a key from her pocket and unlocked the heavy padlock securing it. "I found this 3 years ago. I'd been living here 7 years and never knew it existed. I was looking for the source of a leak and pulled up some boards in the pantry. Found the door. It took me 6 months to work up the courage to open it." She pulled the door up, revealing a dark stairwell leading down. "There's a basement. Not just a basement. Wait until you see." West descended first, lantern held high. Then Vivian, moving slowly, gripping the railing. Autumn and Nola followed. The air grew cooler, damper, thick with the smell of earth and age. The stairs ended in a small cellar, maybe 10 feet square, walls lined with ancient brick. An old coal furnace squatted in one corner, defunct for decades. And behind it, barely visible in the lantern light, a small iron door. Vivian pulled a brass key from around her neck. The key from the envelope. "This was sewn into the lining of the blue coat. I didn't find it until 2 years ago when I was washing it and felt something hard in the seam." The key slid into the lock with a click that seemed to echo forever. The door swung open on hinges that shrieked from disuse. West raised the lantern and they all stared. The room beyond was perhaps 12 feet square, walls lined with rough-cut stone. Dry, climate-controlled somehow despite the house's decay. Shelves ran along 3 walls, and on those shelves sat wooden boxes. 15 of them, each about the size of a shoebox, each sealed with wax. In the center of the room on a small table lay 3 items. A leather-bound journal, a stack of yellowed documents tied with string, 3 oil paintings in ornate frames. Nola was the first to move, drawn forward as if pulled by invisible strings. She reached for the nearest box, looked back at Vivian for permission. "Open it." The wax seal broke with a crack. Inside, nested in aged velvet, gleamed rows of silver coins. Morgan dollars, the date stamped clearly on each face. 1889, 1890, 1891. Autumn picked one up. Heavy, cold, real. "Are these?" West had moved to another box, opened it. More coins, and another, all the same. "I counted them. 512 Morgan dollars, most from the Carson City Mint, worth between 500 and 3,000 each, depending on condition and rarity." Autumn did the math in her head. Even at the low end, they were looking at $250,000, maybe more. "Where did these come from?" Vivian picked up the leather journal with shaking hands. "From your great-great-grandfather, Thornton Brennan. He owned the Silverstone mine outside town. Everyone thought he went bankrupt when the mine closed in 1930. But he didn't. He just made everyone think he did. He took what he'd saved, converted it to gold and silver, and hid it here, in this room that no one knew existed." She opened the journal to the first page. The handwriting was neat, precise, old-fashioned. "Property of Thornton Brennan, 1885 to 1952. To be opened only by the descendant wise enough to find it." Autumn's hands trembled as she turned the pages. Entries dated across decades. Notes about the mine, about the town, about secret purchases of land. And then near the back, a list. Parcels of property, dates of purchase, all in the 1920s. 50 acres on the north edge of Birchwood Falls. The exact location of Cal's Silverstone Heights development. "Are you saying?" Vivian nodded, tears streaming down her wasted face. "Your father sold that land to Montgomery Thorne in 2008 for $50,000. Garrett was drinking, desperate. Montgomery came to him with cash and a story about wanting to invest in the area. Your father never knew the land was worth millions, never knew it had been in our family for 100 years. He thought it was worthless scrub that Thornton had bought on a whim. West had unrolled one of the old documents. A deed, 50 acres, purchased 1922, Brennan family property. Cal's father bought it from Garrett, knowing it was worth a fortune. And when Montgomery died 6 months later, Cal inherited everything, including the knowledge that he'd stolen from us. Stolen from you. Autumn sank down onto the cold stone floor, the journal clutched in her hands. Cal's sudden interest in her when she was 15. His questions about her family, about the house, about whether her parents owned any property outside of town. She'd thought he was just making conversation, thought he cared. He'd been gathering intelligence, even then, even at 18. How did you find out? Vivian's face hardened. Iris Whitmore, the woman who ran Haven House where you stayed after you left. She came to see me 3 years ago, said she had information I needed to hear. She'd been the town clerk for 30 years before she opened the shelter. She remembered the land sale, remembered Montgomery Thorne coming in with a survey report that showed the property was sitting on top of a dormant silver vein, worth millions if developed correctly. Why didn't you do something? I tried, I went to a lawyer, but I'm an old woman with no money. Cal is a multimillionaire with a team of attorneys. The lawyer said without proof that Montgomery knew about the silver when he bought the land, we couldn't prove fraud. And Montgomery's dead, can't testify against himself. Nola's voice cut through the heavy silence. But you could prove Grandpa didn't know. Couldn't you? If he'd known, he wouldn't have sold for $50,000. West looked at the girl with something like admiration. Smart kid. Vivian shook her head. That's not how the law works. The burden of proof is on us. And Cal has deep pockets. He can stall, delay, outspend us. I didn't have the money to fight, so I waited. I knew the cancer was coming. My mother died of it. Her mother, too. When the diagnosis came, I knew this was my last chance. I had to get you here, had to show you this. Because it's not my fight anymore. It's yours. Autumn stood her legs unsteady. You want me to fight Cal to try and get the land back. I want you to know what you're owed. What we stole from you when we threw you out. Your father drank himself to death because he couldn't live with what he'd done to you. But before he died, I made him tell me everything. About Montgomery, about the land, about how Cal had started hanging around you right after Montgomery bought the property. Your father knew. He knew Cal was using you, and he didn't stop it because he was ashamed. Because he'd sold our family's legacy for drinking money. The room was too small, the air too thin. Autumn pushed past them, climbed the stairs, burst into the kitchen, gasping for breath. Behind her, she heard Nola's concerned voice, West's low rumble, Vivian's wet coughing. She made it to the front porch before her legs gave out, sat on the top step, head in her hands, while the world spun around her. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Cal hadn't loved her. Her father hadn't thrown her out in a fit of moral outrage. It had been shame, guilt, the knowledge that he'd destroyed his daughter's life because he couldn't control his drinking. And her mother who'd spent 8 years in this rotting house, dying by inches, waiting for Autumn to come home so she could confess, footsteps behind her. West settled onto the step, his knees cracking audibly. That's a lot to take in. How long have you known? Your mother told me about 6 months ago, when she got too sick to hide it anymore. She made me promise to help get you here, to make sure you saw what was in that room. Cal called me, offered $80,000 for the house. West let out a low whistle. He's desperate then. The development can't move forward without this property. It's right in the middle of the entrance road. And if you own the land he's building on, he's in violation of property law. Everything he's done so far is on your land without permission. But he has a deed from my father. A deed obtained through fraud. Failure to disclose material facts. That's actionable, especially if you can prove Montgomery knew about the silver and didn't tell Garrett. Can I prove that? Iris might have documentation. She was meticulous about records, and Montgomery's survey report had to come from somewhere. Someone did that geological assessment, probably filed with the county, public record. Autumn looked at the old man, really looked. His face was weathered but kind, his eyes clear and honest. Why are you helping us? You don't owe us anything. I've lived next to this house for 40 years, watched you grow up, watched your parents destroy themselves with pride and shame. I don't have kids of my own. Wife died before we got the chance. Your mother, for all her faults, has been trying to do right by you. I figure the least I can do is help her finish what she started. Nola appeared in the doorway, Vivian leaning heavily on her arm. The old woman's face was gray, her breathing labored. I need to lie down. I'm sorry, the stairs were too much. West helped her inside, settling her into the armchair. Autumn followed her mind, racing through impossible calculations. $250,000 in coins, land worth millions. But first she'd have to fight Cal, fight his lawyers, prove fraud against a dead man, and she had 60 days before losing her apartment, no job security, a daughter to protect. Vivian's eyes found hers across the dim room. I know what I'm asking. I know it's not fair, but Cal can't win. If he develops that land, he makes back everything he invested and walks away richer. But if you fight and win, you take back what's ours, what should have gone to you. What would have gone to you if I'd been braver 15 years ago? I don't know if I can do this. You survived being homeless at 15, you gave birth at 16, you raised a daughter alone with no help from anyone. You're the strongest person I know. If anyone can beat Callahan Thorne, it's you. The words should have felt good, should have felt like validation. Instead, they felt like a weight settling onto shoulders already carrying too much. Autumn's phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. She opened it. 1 week, Autumn. Then the offer expires. Don't make this harder than it has to be. See. She showed the screen to West. He frowned. He's watching the house. Probably has someone keeping tabs on who comes and goes. Saw your car. Knows you're here. Is he dangerous? Financially dangerous. Legally dangerous, but not physically. Cal uses money and power, not fists. Small comfort. Vivian coughed, a wet, racking sound that went on too long. When it finally subsided, there was blood on her handkerchief. Nola's face went pale. You need a hospital. I need my daughter. And my granddaughter. Everything else is just waiting for the inevitable. Autumn knelt beside the chair, taking her mother's skeletal hand in both of hers. The skin was tissue paper thin, the bones fragile as bird wings. I'm here. We're here. But I need time to think, to figure out what to do. We don't have much time. I don't have much time. Cal knows that. He's counting on you selling quickly before you understand what you have, before you can mount a defense. West stood. I should get the generator running, at least get you some lights and heat. Nola want to help me? The girl looked to her mother for permission. Autumn nodded. They disappeared outside, leaving mother and daughter alone for the first time in 15 years. Silence stretched between them, 15 years deep. I'm sorry. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. For which part? Throwing me out, not looking for me. Letting Dad sell my inheritance. There's a lot to apologize for. All of it. Every moment of every day since that night. I have replayed it in my head 1,000 times. Imagined myself doing differently, telling your father no. Walking out with you. Being the mother you deserved instead of the coward I was. Tears tracked down the ruined face. But I didn't. I chose your father over you. I chose reputation over your safety. I chose everything wrong, and by the time I realized it, you were gone. I hired a private investigator in Twentine. Spent the last of my savings. He couldn't find you. You'd changed your name, disappeared. I thought maybe you were dead. That I'd killed you with my choices. Autumn wanted to stay hard, wanted to hold on to the anger that had sustained her through the worst years. But looking at this broken woman already halfway to the grave, the anger felt hollow. I'm not dead. I survived. I built a life. I have an incredible daughter. Because of me or in spite of me? In spite of you, but she exists. That's what matters. Vivian's hand tightened on hers with surprising strength. Don't let him win. Don't let Cal take what's yours. Not again, promise me. I can't promise that, miss. I don't even know if fighting is the right choice. It is. Because if you don't, he'll keep taking. From you, from the next person, from everyone who can't fight back. Men like him only understand one thing: power. Show him you have it." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea. Outside, the generator rumbled to life. Lights flickered on overhead, harsh and sudden after the gloom. In the brightness, the full extent of the house's decay became visible. Water stains, mold, holes in the walls. This was what her mother had been living in, choosing to stay in this tomb rather than move somewhere clean and safe because she'd been waiting for Autumn to come home. The weight of that sacrifice was almost unbearable. "We need to get you medical care, real care, not just pills and hope." "There's no point. The cancer's spread to my bones, my brain. Hospice said maybe 3 months, more likely 2. I just wanted to see you before I go, to tell you the truth, to give you a chance to fight back." Nola and West returned, stamping snow from their boots. When had it started snowing? Autumn looked out the window to see fat flakes drifting down, coating the dead garden in white, making everything look clean and new and possible. "We got the heat working too. Should warm up in here pretty quick." Nola moved to her mother's side. "What are we going to do?" The question of the hour, the question with no good answer. Autumn looked at the 3 faces watching her. Her mother dying and desperate for redemption. Her daughter young and trusting and needing stability. West kind and helpful, but ultimately a stranger in their family drama. And then there was Cal, somewhere in this town in some expensive house, sitting in comfort while planning how to steal from her again. The anger she thought had faded roared back to life. "We're going to stay, at least for a few days. I need to talk to Iris, need to see what documentation exists, need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before making any decisions." Vivian sagged back in her chair, relief washing over her features. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me, and for Nola, because I'm tired of running from things. Tired of letting people like Cal take whatever they want without consequences." West nodded approval. "I'll help however I can. First thing, let's get this place habitable. Can't stay here the way it is now. I've got space heaters, sleeping bags. Can probably borrow a camp stove to cook on. Won't be comfortable, but it'll work short term." They spent the next 3 hours making the living room livable. West brought supplies from his house next door while Autumn and Nola cleared garbage, swept floors, wiped down surfaces. Vivian watched from her chair, too weak to help, occasionally offering direction. By nightfall, they had a small camp set up. 3 sleeping bags on the floor, a propane heater glowing in the corner, cans of soup heating on the camp stove. Not home, but shelter, warmth, together. They ate in silence, exhaustion settling over all of them. Vivian managed half a bowl before her hands started shaking too badly to hold the spoon. Autumn helped her, the intimacy of the act strange and painful. When had she last fed her mother? Never. Children didn't feed parents. The reversal felt wrong, a sign of how far things had fallen. After dinner, West headed home with promises to return in the morning. Nola set up her sleeping bag closest to the heater, pulled out her phone, lost herself in the mindless scroll of social media. Autumn helped Vivian to the bathroom, waited outside while the old woman struggled with basic tasks that had once been thoughtless. When she emerged, her face was wet, though whether from washing or crying, Autumn couldn't tell. They settled her into the armchair with blankets piled around her thin frame. She looked like a child, shrunken and fragile and temporary. "There's something else you should know." Autumn, already exhausted, wondered what other revelations could possibly be coming. "In the basement room, there's a letter. I wrote it last month when I knew I was running out of time. It explains everything about your father, about me, about what happened after you left. West has instructions to give it to you after I die, but I wanted you to know it exists. In case you have questions, in case you need answers I can't give anymore. Why not just tell me now? Because some things are easier to say on paper, and because I'm a coward, even now, even facing death, I still can't say everything I need to say to your face." Autumn didn't have the energy to argue, to push. to demand the truth right now instead of waiting for a letter from beyond the grave. She just nodded. Okay, I'll read it when the time comes. Vivian's eyes drifted closed. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. Autumn watched her chest rise and fall, each breath labored, counting them unconsciously, wondering how many were left. Nola appeared at her elbow, voice soft. Is she going to die soon? Yes. Are you sad about it? Autumn considered the question, turned it over in her mind like one of those silver coins in the basement. I don't know what I feel, relief maybe. That I got here before the end, that she wanted to see me, anger still for everything that happened, grief for what we could have been if things had been different. It's all mixed together, I can't separate it out. Nola rested her head on Autumn's shoulder. I'm glad we came, even if the house is scary and everything's confusing. I'm glad I got to meet her, got to see where you came from. They sat like that until the cold forced them into their sleeping bags. Autumn lay awake long after Nola's breathing deepened into sleep, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to her mother's ragged breathing across the room. Somewhere in this town, Cal was sleeping in a warm bed in a house with working plumbing and heat that didn't come from a propane tank. Making plans, calculating, thinking he'd won before the game had even really started. He didn't know about the basement room, didn't know about the coins or the journal or the deeds, thought he was dealing with a desperate single mother who needed quick cash. He was in for a surprise. Autumn's phone buzzed. Another text. She almost didn't look, but something made her check. I saw you talking to West Marlowe. Be careful who you trust. Small town, long memories. Not everyone is who they seem. Sleep well. C. The threat was subtle but clear. Cal had eyes everywhere, knew her movements, wanted her to know he was watching. Instead of fear, Autumn felt something else crystallize inside her. Determination, cold and hard and unbreakable. Cal had taken enough. Her innocence, her family, her inheritance. He thought he could take this too. Thought money and power and intimidation would make her fold. He was about to learn the difference between a scared 15-year-old girl and a 30-year-old woman who'd survived everything the world could throw at her. She texted back, "Thanks for the concern. See you soon." His reply came immediately, looking forward to it. Autumn set the phone aside and closed her eyes. Tomorrow they'd visit Iris, start gathering evidence, begin building a case. But tonight she'd sleep in the house she grew up in, with her mother breathing across the room and her daughter safe beside her, and let that be enough. The snow fell heavier outside, muffling sound, coating everything in white. In the distance, a church bell tolled midnight, the old year dying, the new one waiting to be born. And in the basement, hidden behind a coal furnace in a room no one knew existed, sat a fortune in silver and secrets, waiting to change everything. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through boards nailed over broken windows. Autumn woke to find Vivian already awake in her chair, staring at nothing, lips moving in what might have been prayer or simply the rehearsal of words she'd never said aloud. The propane heater had died sometime in the night, their breath misted in the frigid air. Nola stirred, pulling the sleeping bag tighter around her shoulders. It's freezing. West appeared at the front door before they'd finished breakfast, carrying a thermos of coffee and a bag of pastries from the bakery on Main Street. His cheeks were red from the cold snow dusting his shoulders. Thought you could use something warm. Also brought the local paper. You're going to want to see page 3. He spread the Birchwood Falls Gazette across the cleared section of floor. The headline jumped out: Thorn Development breaks ground on Silverstone Heights. Mayor calls it new era for Birchwood Falls. The photograph showed Cal in a hard hat, golden shovel breaking earth, the mayor and town council arranged behind him like props. The article gushed about job creation, increased tax revenue, putting Birchwood Falls on the map for affluent Seattle families seeking mountain retreats. Not one word about the family who actually owned the land. Not one mention of Thornton Brennan or the mine that had built this town a century ago. He's moving fast, trying to establish facts on the ground before anyone can challenge him. Autumn studied Cal's face in the photograph. The same confidence she remembered. The same certainty that the world would bend to accommodate his desires. When was this taken? Yesterday afternoon, right after you arrived in town, I'd wager, sending you a message. Vivian reached for the paper with trembling hands, brought it close to her failing eyes. Thornton would be devastated. That land was supposed to stay in the family, passed down through generations, not get sold off to pay for your father's drinking. The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Nola finished her pastry, wiped crumbs from her lips. Can we go see Iris today, the lady who ran the shelter where Mom stayed? West nodded. Haven House is still operating. Iris would be there Sunday morning. She makes breakfast for the residents every weekend, her tradition. They bundled Vivian into the back seat of Autumn's Civic, the old woman protesting weakly that she could stay home alone. But the house without heat was too dangerous, and none of them were willing to leave her unsupervised. Her breathing had worsened overnight. Each inhale rattled, each exhale wheezed. Haven House occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial edge of town, away from the respectable neighborhoods where people preferred to pretend homelessness didn't exist in places like Birchwood Falls. The building's exterior was weathered brick, but someone had painted bright murals on the walls. Flowers, birds, words in flowing script. You are welcome here. You are safe here. You are loved here. Autumn remembered those words, had stared at them for hours in those first days after being thrown out, wondering if they could possibly be true. Iris Whitmore stood at the industrial stove in the communal kitchen, flipping pancakes with practiced efficiency. 65 years old, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing an apron that declared, "Blessed are those who help." She looked up as they entered, and her face transformed. Autumn Brennan, as I live and breathe. She crossed the kitchen in 4 strides, pulled Autumn into a fierce embrace that smelled of vanilla and cinnamon. I heard you were back. Hoped you'd come see me. This is my daughter Nola, and you remember my mother. Iris's expression shifted as she took in Vivian's deteriorated state. Viv, I'm sorry to see you like this. We all end up somewhere, Iris. At least I ended up knowing my daughter came back. The two women exchanged a look weighted with history Autumn didn't fully understand. Can we talk privately? Iris gestured to a small office off the main room. Give me 5 minutes to get breakfast served, then we'll talk all you need. They waited in the cramped office while sounds of breakfast service filtered through the thin walls. Voices of women and children, the scrape of chairs, the mundane domesticity of people trying to survive another day. Autumn had been one of them, had sat at those same tables, eaten from those same plates, existed in that liminal space between what was and what might be. Iris entered, closed the door, settled into the chair behind her desk with a sigh. First things first, how much do you know? About the land, about Cal's father investigating our family, enough to know I was used. More than used, targeted. Montgomery Thorne was a ruthless man, made his fortune in real estate speculation, buying properties before anyone else realized their value. He heard about the Silverstone mine closing, got curious about what happened to all that silver. Did his research, found out Thornton Brennan had been sitting on undeveloped land that geological surveys suggested might contain significant deposits. She pulled a file from her desk drawer, thick with papers yellowed by time. I was town clerk for 30 years, saw every transaction, every deed transfer, every survey filed with the county. This is Montgomery's geological survey, filed 6 months before he approached your father about buying the land. Autumn took the document, scanning technical language she barely understood. But the conclusion was clear. The property contained an estimated $5 million worth of extractable silver at 2007 prices. More now, with precious metals climbing. My father didn't see this. Montgomery made sure he didn't. Came to Garrett directly, private offer, cash payment. Didn't go through normal channels. Your father was desperate, drinking heavy, behind on the mortgage. Montgomery offered him a lifeline, and Garrett grabbed it without asking questions he should have asked. Nola leaned forward, reading over Autumn's shoulder. But this is fraud, right? Not telling someone what their property is worth. Iris's smile was grim. In theory, in practice proving it when the person who committed the fraud is dead gets complicated. Cal inherited everything legally. The burden would be on you to prove Montgomery knowingly withheld material information. And Cal has lawyers who can tie up a case like that for years. So we can't win? I didn't say that. I said it would be hard. But there's another angle. The development Cal's building is on your land that was sold under fraudulent pretenses. If you can void the original sale, everything Cal's built becomes trespassing. Construction without permission. That's actionable immediately. Vivian coughed, the sound wet and painful. Iris poured water from a pitcher on her desk, helped the old woman drink. You should be in a hospital, Viv. I should be a lot of things. Mostly I should be a better mother 15 years ago. Can't change the past, can only try to fix the future. West, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. What would Autumn need to file a challenge? What kind of evidence? Original deed showing Brennan family ownership. Proof that Garrett didn't know the land's value. Montgomery's geological survey showing he did know. Medical records or testimony establishing Garrett's compromised mental state at the time of sale due to alcohol dependency. Financial records showing the desperation that made him vulnerable to exploitation. I have the deed, the journal. The survey's right here. What about the medical records? Iris pulled another folder. I took the liberty of requesting Garrett's medical files after Viv told me what happened. His doctor documented alcohol dependency, impaired judgment, depression, all dated in the months leading up to the land sale. Any competent lawyer could argue he wasn't capable of informed consent. Autumn stared at the growing pile of documentation. You've been building a case for years. I've been waiting for someone to come back and fight. Viv wasn't strong enough, but you are. You survived homelessness, teen pregnancy, raised a daughter alone. You're exactly the kind of person who doesn't back down from bullies. The words should have felt empowering. Instead, they felt like another burden settling onto shoulders already straining under the weight of impossibility. I have 60 days before I lose my apartment in Portland. I have a daughter to support. I can't afford a legal battle with a multimillionaire. You don't have to afford it. I know a lawyer, Delilah Kingsley. She takes cases like this pro bono when she believes in the cause, specializes in land fraud, based in Seattle but handles cases all over Washington. I already called her. She's willing to meet. Everything was moving too fast. Yesterday, she'd been a single mother barely keeping her head above water. Today, she was somehow expected to take on a legal battle against the man who'd destroyed her life once already. I need time to think. We don't have time. Cal's breaking ground. Every day that passes, he sinks more money into the development, makes it harder to unwind. We need to file an injunction. Stop construction while the ownership dispute is resolved. Vivian's hand found Autumn's arm grip, weak but urgent. Please don't let him win again. I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. The office felt suffocating. Too small, too many eyes watching, too many expectations pressing down. Autumn stood. I need air. She pushed out through the kitchen, past women who looked up from their breakfast with knowing eyes and into the cold morning. Snow had stopped falling but lay thick on the ground, transforming the industrial ugliness into something almost beautiful. Nola followed as Autumn knew she would. Mom, you okay? No, I'm not okay. I'm broke and I'm scared and I have no idea what I'm doing. But you're going to fight anyway, right? Autumn looked at her daughter, 14 years old enough to understand struggle, old enough to have watched her mother work 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, old enough to know that sometimes the only choice was to fight or surrender. And surrender meant letting people like Cal keep taking. I don't know how to do this. Don't know how to be the person everyone seems to think I am. Nola's arms wrapped around her waist, fierce and grounding. You already are that person. You just haven't realized it yet. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of construction equipment. Cal's crew's working Sunday morning, racing to establish his claim before anyone could challenge it. The sound made something crystallize in Autumn's chest, something hard and cold and absolutely done with running. She pulled out her phone, dialed the number Iris had written on a scrap of paper. "Delilah Kingsley." The voice was crisp, professional female. "My name is Autumn Brennan. Iris Whitmore said you might be able to help me." They met that afternoon at a coffee shop in the nicer part of Birchwood Falls, where professionals came to pretend they were in Seattle for an hour. Delilah Kingsley was 42, blonde hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Autumn's car. She ordered a latte and opened a leather portfolio with efficient movements. "Iris sent me the preliminary documentation. You have a solid case, not guaranteed but solid." West had stayed with Vivian at Haven House while Autumn and Nola met with the lawyer. Now Autumn spread her own documents across the small table between them. "What are the chances we actually win?" "Honestly, 60-40 in your favor. The fraud is clear. The question is whether a judge will void a transaction from 16 years ago when the perpetrator is dead. Cal will argue that he bought the property in good faith from his father's estate, that he had no knowledge of how Montgomery acquired it, that invalidating the sale would cause undue financial hardship. But he's developing land that isn't his. That's our strongest argument. We file for an emergency injunction, stop construction immediately. Force Cal to prove his ownership is legitimate. Put him on the defensive." Nola sipped her hot chocolate, listening intently. "What happens if we lose?" Delilah's expression softened slightly. "If we lose, Cal keeps the land, finishes his development, makes millions, and you walk away with nothing except the knowledge you tried. And if we win, the original sale is voided. The land reverts to Autumn as Thornton Brennan's heir. Cal has to remove everything he's built or negotiate a settlement to purchase the land at fair market value. We're talking millions of dollars." Millions. The word seemed absurd. Autumn had spent her adult life calculating in hundreds, worrying about whether she could afford new shoes for Nola, whether the electricity bill would bounce this month. "What do you need from me?" "Your signature on a retainer agreement, permission to file on your behalf, and your commitment to see this through. Cal will fight dirty. He'll drag your past through the mud, try to paint you as a gold digger who abandoned her family and only came back when she smelled money. You need to be prepared for that." The truth was uglier than anything Cal could invent, but the truth was also hers, and she was done being ashamed of it. "I'm prepared." Delilah slid papers across the table. "Then let's make this official." Autumn signed her name with hands that shook only slightly. Watched Delilah countersign, date file, everything in her portfolio with the same efficiency she'd shown since arriving. "I'll file the injunction tomorrow morning. Cal will be served by end of day. Expect him to be very unhappy about it. I expect he's been unhappy since I didn't immediately accept his offer. Speaking of which, has he contacted you again?" Autumn showed her the text messages. Delilah's mouth compressed into a thin line. "Save everything. Every text, every call, every communication. If he escalates to threats or intimidation, that's harassment. Gives us more ammunition." They parted with handshakes and promises to stay in touch. Autumn and Nola drove back to Haven House in silence, both processing what had just happened, the enormity of the decision, the point of no return they'd just crossed. West met them at the door, face grave. "Vivian's asking for you. She's not good." Iris had moved the old woman to one of the private rooms Haven House kept for medical emergencies. She lay on a narrow bed, oxygen cannula in her nose chest, working hard for each breath. Her eyes tracked to Autumn as she entered. "Did you do it? Did you hire the lawyer?" "I did." Relief washed across Vivian's face. "Good, that's good. Now I can rest. Don't talk like that. You're not dying today." "I'm dying every day, have been for months, but now I can die knowing you have a chance, knowing I did something right before the end." Nola climbed onto the bed beside her grandmother, careful not to jostle the fragile body. "Tell me about Mom when she was my age. What was she like?" Vivian's eyes went distant, seeing through time. Stubborn, smart, too trusting. She believed the best in people. Used to drive her father crazy because she'd give her lunch money to kids who looked hungry. Come home with stories about helping classmates with homework. She had this light in her, this certainty that the world was good and people were kind. Her gaze found Autumn's. I helped destroy that light. Watching it go out in her eyes the night we threw her out was the worst thing I've ever experienced. Worse than your father's death, worse than the cancer. Because I knew I'd done it. We'd done it. And there was no taking it back. Autumn sat on the other side of the bed, the 3 generations of Brennan women arranged like points on a compass. You can't undo the past. None of us can. We can only decide what we do with the time we have left. Then I want to use my time telling you I'm proud of who you became. Not because of me, but despite me. You took the worst thing that could happen and built a life anyway. Built a daughter who's smart and strong and good. That's not nothing. Nola's hand found Vivian's. I'm glad I got to meet you, even if it's not for very long. They sat like that until Vivian drifted into sleep, her breathing labored but steady. Iris appeared with blankets and pillows. You should stay here tonight. The house is too cold and she needs you close. They made a nest on the floor of the small room, Autumn and Nola on either side of Vivian's bed like sentinels. Somewhere in the building, other women were settling in for the night. Other children were being tucked into bed. Other stories of survival were unfolding. Autumn's phone buzzed. She checked it, expecting another message from Cal. Instead, it was from an unknown number with a Birchwood Falls area code. The message contained a single photograph. Her car parked outside Haven House, taken from across the street, time-stamped 30 minutes ago. No words, just the image. The implication clear: I know where you are. I'm watching. She showed West, who'd been standing guard outside the room. His jaw tightened. That's intimidation. Harassment. Save it for Delilah. Should I be worried? Should I take Nola somewhere safer? Cal's not violent, but he's desperate. Desperate men make bad choices. I'll stay tonight. Keep watch. Make sure nobody tries anything stupid. The old carpenter settled into a chair in the hallway, pulled out a worn paperback, made himself comfortable. Autumn wanted to protest that he didn't need to do this, that they weren't his responsibility. But the words stuck in her throat, tangled up with gratitude and relief, and the unfamiliar sensation of not being completely alone. Morning brought Delilah's call. Injunction filed. Judge scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow afternoon. Cal's been served. His lawyer already called, throwing threats around, wants to settle before it gets to court. Autumn's heart hammered. Settle for how much? $200,000, plus he keeps the land, essentially paying you to go away. $200,000, enough to solve every financial problem she had. Enough to buy a house, set up a college fund for Nola, live without the constant terror of poverty. Enough to let Cal win. What do you think I should do? I think that's not my decision. But I will say this: Cal doesn't offer settlements unless he's scared, and he wouldn't be scared unless he thought you could win. I need to talk to my daughter. She found Nola in the Haven House common room, helping Iris set up for breakfast service. The girl moved with easy competence, arranging plates and silverware with the familiarity of someone who'd done similar work before. Nola, can we talk? They stepped into the empty office. Autumn explained the settlement offer, watched her daughter's face process the numbers. That's a lot of money. It is. But it's not what we're owed. Is it? No, it's not. Nola picked at a loose thread on her sweater. In school, we read this story about a guy who sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Teacher said it was about making short-term choices that cost you long-term. This feels like that. Out of the mouths of babes. Autumn pulled her daughter into a hug. You're too smart for 14. I learned from watching you. You never took the easy way, even when it would have been easier to give up, to take whatever people offered. You always fought for what was right. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward through years of choices and sacrifices and moments when giving up would have been so much simpler than continuing. Then we turn it down. We go to court. We fight. She called Delilah back. Tell Cal thanks, but no. See you in court. The hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. Monday in the Birchwood Falls Courthouse, a granite building that had anchored Main Street since 1920. Autumn dressed in her best outfit, a navy suit she'd bought for job interviews 5 years ago. Nola wore a dress borrowed from Iris's donation closet. Vivian insisted on attending despite barely having strength to walk. Cal arrived 15 minutes late, flanked by 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than Autumn's car. He'd aged well. The 18-year-old boy had become a confident man, silver threading through dark hairlines around his eyes that suggested laughter or stress or both. He looked at Autumn with an expression she couldn't quite read. Recognition, calculation, something that might have been regret under different circumstances. His lead lawyer was a shark in pinstripes, introducing himself as Marcus Thorne, no relation, but wouldn't that be funny if he was? He smiled with too many teeth and launched into immediate offense. Your Honor, this case is a transparent attempt to extort money from my client. Ms. Brennan abandoned her family 15 years ago, had no contact with her parents, never expressed interest in family property, only returned when she learned the land had value. This is textbook bad faith. Delilah stood unruffled. Your Honor, Ms. Brennan was 16 years old when she left home. She didn't abandon her family. She was thrown out by parents who disapproved of her pregnancy. She was a child. What Mr. Thorne describes as abandonment was actually survival. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses on a chain, looked unimpressed with both of them. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. Ms. Kingsley, you're alleging fraud in the original land sale. On what basis? Delilah presented the geological survey, the medical records, the financial documentation showing Garrett's desperation. Montgomery Thorne knew the land contained valuable mineral deposits. He deliberately withheld that information from a man whose medical records show impaired judgment due to alcoholism. The sale was unconscionable. Marcus Thorne stood again. Montgomery Thorne is dead. He can't defend himself against these accusations. What we have is a legal sale properly executed that my client inherited in good faith. To void it now would be grossly unjust. The injustice is allowing your client to develop land that rightfully belongs to Ms. Brennan. Land that should have passed to her as Thornton Brennan's heir. Land that was stolen through exploitation of her father's illness. The arguments flew back and forth, technical and heated. Autumn tried to follow but lost the thread in the legal jargon. She focused instead on Cal's face. He sat perfectly still, expression neutral, but his hands gripped the armrests of his chair with white-knuckled intensity. He was scared, actually scared. The realization sent something fierce and hot through her chest. All those years ago he'd had all the power. The older boy, the popular athlete, the one who could walk away without consequences while she dealt with the wreckage alone. Now they were equals, or close enough. The judge called a recess, disappeared into chambers. They waited in uncomfortable silence. Cal's lawyers huddled together, whispering. Marcus Thorne kept glancing at Autumn with an expression that suggested he was recalculating his strategy. Cal himself approached during the recess, his lawyers trying and failing to stop him. Autumn, can we talk privately? Delilah's hand landed on her shoulder. You don't have to. It's okay. I want to hear what he has to say. They stepped into a hallway away from the others. Cal leaned against the wall, and for a moment he looked tired. Human. Nothing like the confident developer in the newspaper photographs. I didn't know. When I was 18, I didn't know what my father was planning. I thought he was just buying land for investment. But you know now. I found out after he died, found his files, saw the survey. By then I'd already started developing the property, sunk millions into infrastructure. I couldn't just walk away. So you decided to keep stealing. He flinched. I decided to finish what my father started. I know that doesn't make it right, but I've employed 30 people, brought investment to this town. That has to count for something. You want credit for building a fortune on land you knew wasn't yours? His jaw tightened. I want you to understand I'm not the villain here. My father was. I'm just trying to survive his choices. The parallel was so obvious it would have been funny under different circumstances. Both of them trying to survive their parents' choices, both carrying weight they hadn't chosen, but sympathy had limits. I was 15, Cal, pregnant, terrified. You disappeared without a word, left me to deal with everything alone, so no, I don't care about your justifications. You had options, I didn't. I was 18, stupid, scared. My father told me to stay away from you. Said it would complicate things. I listened because I always listened to him. I should have been stronger. I should have stood up to him. I'm sorry. The apology landed hollow. Too late. Too self-serving. I don't forgive you. And I'm not dropping this case. If you want the land, you're going to have to pay fair market value for it. His expression hardened. You're making a mistake. I have resources you can't imagine. I can drag this out for years, bankrupt you with legal fees. Delilah works pro bono. Try again. Then I'll destroy your reputation. Make sure everyone knows you abandoned your dying mother. Came back only when money was involved. Something in Autumn snapped. Years of swallowed rage, of accepting blame for things that weren't her fault, of letting men like Cal define her worth. She stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than shouting. Do your worst. Tell everyone whatever story makes you feel better. But we both know the truth. You used me. Your father stole from my family, and now you're going to face consequences, maybe for the first time in your privileged life. Cal opened his mouth to respond, but the bailiff called them back. The judge had returned. They filed intention thick enough to choke on. The judge adjusted her glasses, surveyed the courtroom with an expression that gave nothing away. I've reviewed the evidence presented. The geological survey is troubling. Medical records establish impaired judgment. However, the sale was legally executed. Both parties signed. Money changed hands. Voiding a 16-year-old transaction sets a dangerous precedent. Autumn's heart sank. They were losing all this for nothing. However, Ms. Kingsley's point about current trespassing is valid. Mr. Thorne is developing land while ownership is disputed. That cannot continue. The judge looked directly at Cal. I'm issuing a temporary injunction. All construction on the Silverstone Heights development ceases immediately. No new work, no demolition. Everything stops until ownership is definitively established. Marcus Thorne shot to his feet. Your Honor, that will cost my client millions. He has contracts, obligations, deadlines. Then your client should have ensured clear title before breaking ground. Injunction is effective immediately. We'll schedule a full trial for 3 weeks from today. Both parties will present complete evidence. Until then, nobody touches that land. Are we clear? Both lawyers nodded. The judge's gavel fell with a crack that seemed to echo forever. Outside the courthouse, television news crews had gathered. Someone had leaked the story. Cameras turned as they emerged, microphones thrust forward. Ms. Brennan, is it true you're suing for millions? Did you really abandon your dying mother? Mr. Thorne, how will this affect your development timeline? Delilah pushed through the crowd, shielding Autumn and Nola with her body. West had brought the car around, engine running. They piled in and drove away while reporters shouted questions at their retreating vehicle. Back at Haven House, Vivian waited in the common room oxygen tank beside her chair. Her eyes found Autumn's questioning. We got the injunction. Construction stops. The relief that washed across the old woman's face was physical. Thank God, thank God. She started crying, weak body shaking with sobs. Autumn knelt beside the chair, uncertain whether to offer comfort or maintain distance. Nola made the choice for her, wrapping both of them in an awkward three-way embrace. We're going to win. I know we are. Nola's certainty was absolute. Youth's blessing and curse. Not yet having learned that wanting something badly enough didn't make it true. But looking at her daughter's fierce expression, Autumn felt something shift. Maybe belief wasn't about certainty. Maybe it was about deciding the fight was worth fighting regardless of the outcome. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Cal's number. You just cost me $3 million in delays and penalties. I hope it was worth it, she typed back without hesitation. Every penny. That night they ate donated pizza in Haven House common room. while news coverage played on the television mounted in the corner. The local anchor described the case as David versus Goliath, and single mother takes on wealthy developer. The photographs they showed made Autumn look tired and desperate, made Cal look powerful and wronged, but the anchor's tone suggested sympathy was with the underdog. Small towns loved a story about one of their own fighting back against outsiders. Never mind that Cal's family had been in Birchwood Falls for generations. He'd become the outsider by virtue of success. West pointed at the screen. Public opinion matters. Judges read the news, see which way the wind blows. This is good for us. Unless it makes Cal more dangerous. Cal's already as dangerous as he's going to get. Now it's just a question of who breaks first. Autumn looked at her daughter curled up beside Vivian on the couch, both of them dozing while the news droned on. Looked at West keeping watch by the window. Looked at Iris moving through the room, checking on residents, offering quiet comfort. She'd spent 15 years alone, fighting every battle solo, never asking for help because help always came with strings. But these people weren't asking for anything in return. They were just showing up, being present, offering what they could. Maybe that was what family actually meant. Not blood, not obligation, just people who chose to stand beside you when standing alone would have been easier. She sent a text to Delilah. "Thank you for taking this case, for believing me." The response came quickly. "I don't take cases I don't believe in. Get some rest. Trial prep starts tomorrow." It's going to get harder before it gets easier. Harder, as if the past 24 hours had been easy, as if her entire life had been anything but an exercise in surviving the next impossible thing. But she'd survived everything so far. Teen pregnancy, homelessness, single motherhood, poverty. She'd survived her parents' rejection and Cal's abandonment, and every person who'd looked at her and seen only what she lacked instead of what she'd built. She could survive this too. Outside snow began falling again, sunt and relentless, covering the ugliness, making everything look clean and possible. Autumn watched it through the window until her eyes grew heavy and sleep pulled her under. In the morning, they'd begin building the case that would determine everything. But tonight, in this moment, they had shelter and warmth and each other. Sometimes that had to be enough. Trial preparation consumed the next 3 weeks like a fever. Delilah set up temporary headquarters in Haven House's conference room, transforming it into a war room papered with timelines, property maps, and witness lists. Autumn learned the difference between discovery and deposition, between hearsay and admissible evidence, between what was true and what could be proven in court. The silver coins became evidence photographed and cataloged but left in the basement vault. Too risky to move, Delilah explained. Chain of custody issues. Better to bring the judge to the house if necessary than risk accusations of tampering. Vivian deteriorated daily. The oxygen tank became permanent. Her lucid hours shrank to brief windows in the morning before pain medication pulled her under. Hospice nurses came twice a day, gentle women who spoke in hushed tones about comfort measures and letting go. "I need to make it to the trial. Need to testify." Vivian's voice was thread-thin, barely audible over the hiss of oxygen. Delilah sat beside the bed, legal pad balanced on her knee. "Your written deposition might be enough. The judge will consider your medical condition." "No, I need to look Cal in the eye. Need him to hear what his father did from my mouth. Need it to matter." Her determination was fierce despite the frailty, or because of it. Nothing left to lose made people either surrender or become absolutely immovable. The trial began on a Monday, courtroom packed with reporters and curious townspeople. Jury selection took all day. Delilah questioned potential jurors with surgical precision, eliminating anyone with obvious bias. By 5 p.m., they had 12 jurors and 2 alternates. Opening statements the next morning laid out the battle lines. Delilah painted Montgomery Thorne as a predator who'd exploited Garrett's alcoholism. Cal's lawyer, Marcus Thorne, argued legal contracts and property rights, suggesting Autumn was an opportunist who'd abandoned her family and returned only when money was involved. Witnesses paraded through over 3 days. Iris testified about the geological survey Montgomery had filed before approaching Garrett. West described watching through his kitchen window as a drunk man was guided to sign papers he couldn't understand. Medical experts detailed Garrett's impaired judgment. Bank officers confirmed his desperate financial state. Cal took the stand on day 3, confident and practiced. He claimed ignorance of his father's methods, insisted he'd operated in good faith, expressed regret for how he'd treated Autumn, but denied any deliberate wrongdoing. Delilah cross-examined with precision, produced Montgomery's notebooks showing conversations with Cal about gathering information from the Brennan girl, showed entries dated throughout that summer demonstrating Cal had been his father's inside source. Cal's composure cracked. The jury's skepticism became visible. Closing arguments on day 4 were passionate. Marcus Thorne defended property rights and legal precedent. Delilah spoke about justice delayed but not denied, about holding powerful people accountable regardless of time passed. The jury deliberated 6 hours before announcing they'd reached a verdict. The foreman stood. On the question of whether the land sale was obtained through fraudulent misrepresentation, we find in favor of the plaintiff. We award the plaintiff ownership of the disputed 50 acres plus compensatory damages of $3 million. The courtroom erupted, Cal's face drained of color. His lawyers immediately filed notice of appeal. Autumn couldn't process it. They'd won, actually won. But all she could think was, Mom needs to know. They rushed back to Haven House, bursting into Vivian's room where she lay connected to oxygen and morphine drip. Her eyes opened, clouded but aware. We won. Mom, we won. Vivian's face transformed. Tears streamed down hollow cheeks. Her hand reached for Autumn's grip, weak as paper. Thank God. Thank God. Now I can rest. Don't talk like that. You're going to be okay. But they both knew better. Vivian had held on through sheer will. Now, with justice served, the will was fading. Take me home, to Portland. I want to die with my family. Autumn rented a medical transport van, loaded Vivian's hospital bed and equipment, made the 4-hour drive with hospice nurses monitoring vitals. They converted the living room of her Portland apartment into a makeshift hospice room. Equipment beeping softly, late winter light filtering through curtains. Vivian lasted 3 months. Some days she was lucid, telling stories about Autumn's childhood, teaching Nola family recipes she'd never shared before. Other days she drifted, lost in memories or medication. Cal's lawyers filed appeal after appeal, but the judge denied each one. The verdict stood. Autumn was legally entitled to the 50 acres and $3 million. Cal's construction equipment sat idle on land he no longer had rights to develop. In late February, a developer from Seattle contacted Delilah. They specialized in sustainable housing, mixed-income communities. They offered $8 million for the 50 acres with conditions: build a public park named for Thornton Brennan, include affordable housing units, preserve the historical significance. Autumn accepted. $8 million plus $3 million in damages meant $11 million. More money than she'd dreamed possible. She paid off the Portland apartment mortgage, set up a college fund for Nola that would cover any university she chose, donated $2 million to Haven House, ensuring Iris could continue helping women who'd been thrown away by families that should have protected them. The rest she kept for what came next. Vivian died on March 15th, late afternoon, with Autumn holding one hand and Nola the other. Her last words were barely audible. I'm proud of you. Should have said it more. Then she was gone. The hospice nurse confirmed it with gentle efficiency. Autumn sat with the body for an hour, feeling nothing and everything simultaneously. They held the funeral in Birchwood Falls. Small ceremony, maybe 50 people. West spoke about watching Vivian wait 15 years for her daughter to come home. Iris talked about a woman who'd spent her final months trying to undo a lifetime of mistakes. Autumn gave the eulogy. My mother wasn't perfect. She made terrible choices, but she spent her last years preparing the way for me to fight back. She couldn't undo the past, but she gave me the tools to change the future. I forgive her, not because she earned it, but because holding anger was exhausting and she suffered enough. Cal didn't attend, sent flowers instead, white roses with a card, "I'm sorry for everything." Too little, too late. But at least he'd finally said it. After the funeral, Autumn stood in front of the house on Birchwood Lane. The Victorian sat exactly as she'd left it weeks ago, rotting and abandoned. But looking at it now, she saw something different. Not a monument to decay, a possibility. "West, how long would it take to restore this house? Really restore it, make it beautiful again?" The old carpenter surveyed the structure with a professional eye. "6 months if we do it right. Longer if you want period-accurate details. I want it perfect. I want it exactly how it was when Thornton built it. And then I want to turn it into something that matters." She hired West as general contractor, assembled a crew of local workers who remembered the Brennan family, who felt the town owed something after all these years. They worked through spring and summer, stripping away decades of neglect. The wraparound porch was rebuilt with cedar painted white with navy trim. Windows replaced with historically accurate reproductions. The interior gutted and modernized while preserving original details. Hardwood floors refinished. Wallpaper hung in patterns from 1900s catalogs. The rose garden became West's personal project. He researched Victorian garden design, planted 50 heritage rose bushes in arrangements that would have made Vivian weep. Each variety labeled with brass plaques naming the women who'd been helped by Haven House that year. The basement vault became a museum. Glass cases displayed Thornton's journal, the remaining Morgan dollars, photographs of the mine, documentation of the family's history. A plaque explained the legal battle, the victory, the reclamation of stolen legacy. Autumn kept one coin. Had it set in a pendant Nola wore to her 15th birthday party that August, held in the restored parlor with 30 of her friends. By December, the house was finished, not just restored, transformed. Autumn stood in what had been her childhood bedroom, now converted to an office, and felt something settle in her chest. This was closure. This was healing. But it was also a beginning. She filed papers establishing the Brennan House Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing temporary housing and support services for single mothers, teen parents, women escaping difficult situations. The Victorian would house 5 families at a time, offering private rooms, shared common spaces, access to counseling and job training. The grand opening was scheduled for December 20th, exactly 1 year after Autumn had returned to Birchwood Falls. 200 people attended. The mayor gave a speech about community responsibility. Iris cut the ribbon, tears streaming down her face. Local news covered it extensively. National outlets picked up the story of the single mother who'd sued a developer and won, then used her settlement to help others. Autumn stood on the wraparound porch, looking out at faces of people who'd come to celebrate. West beside her unofficial grandfather to Nola, Delilah, who'd flown in from Seattle, former Haven House residents who'd gone on to build stable lives, townspeople who remembered Thornton, who felt pride seeing his house reborn. She gave a short speech. 15 years ago, my mother stood at a window in this house and watched me walk away. She made a choice that night that hurt us both. But before she died, she made different choices, choices that led to this moment. This house was built by a man who believed in family legacy. It fell into neglect when that legacy was forgotten. Now it's being reborn as a place where new legacies can begin, where women who've been told they're worthless can discover their worth, where mistakes don't have to define futures. The crowd applauded. As people filed inside for tours, a girl approached. 16, maybe 17, bruised eye makeup couldn't quite hide, backpack slung over thin shoulders. "Are you Ms. Brennan? I saw the news story about this place. I was wondering. I left home 3 days ago, been sleeping in my car. I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do." Autumn recognized herself in those frightened eyes. 15 years collapsed. "What's your name?" Bryn Thorne." The universe had a sense of irony. Cal's daughter. From his marriage 5 years ago to a woman who, according to town gossip, he treated with the same dismissive cruelty he'd shown Autumn. Does your father know you're here? He doesn't know I left, doesn't care enough to notice. Nola appeared at Autumn's elbow, having overheard. She looked at Bryn with something like recognition. Sisters, technically. Same abandoning father, different circumstances, but parallel pain. You can stay here. We have a room ready. It's safe. You're safe. Bryn's face crumpled. Thank you. God, thank you. Autumn hugged her. This stranger. This connection to a past that still had power to wound. But this was what Brennan House was for. Breaking cycles, offering chances, refusing to let one generation's failures doom the next. That night, after the celebration ended, after guests departed and lights dimmed, Autumn walked through the quiet house. 5 women slept in upstairs bedrooms. Bryn in the room that had been Autumn's. 2 single mothers with toddlers. A college student who'd been kicked out for being pregnant. A woman escaping an abusive marriage. Each one a story, each one fighting, each one refusing to let circumstances write their ending. In the basement museum, Autumn stood before the display of Thornton's journal. Read his words about building legacy, about leaving something that mattered. I hope you'd be proud of this. Hope you'd think I honored what you built. No answer, of course. Just the weight of history and the promise of tomorrow. She climbed the stairs to find Nola and Bryn in the kitchen making tea, talking quietly about schools and futures and the men who'd failed them. Sisters finding each other across the wreckage their father had left behind. Nola looked up. Mom, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Better than good. Outside, snow began falling. First snow of winter, exactly like the day she'd returned a year ago. But everything was different now. The house was alive. The garden bloomed. The basement held history instead of secrets. And 5 women slept under a roof that promised safety instead of judgment. West appeared in the doorway, having stayed late to check the new furnace. Heat's working perfect. Thermostat set to 72. Everyone should sleep warm tonight. Thank you for everything, for believing this was possible. You made it possible. You and that stubborn refusal to quit. Vivian would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Autumn walked him to the door, watched him cross to his house next door. Same house he'd lived in for 40 years. Same view of the Victorian. But now he watched over something being built instead of something dying. Her phone buzzed. Message from Delilah. Saw the news coverage. Beautiful event. You did it. Changed the world a little bit. That's not nothing. Autumn texted back. Thank you for making it possible. For fighting when I didn't know how. She made her own tea, joined the girls at the kitchen table. They talked until midnight about colleges Nola was considering, about whether Bryn wanted to keep her baby or consider adoption, about futures that felt suddenly possible instead of predetermined. Around 1 a.m. they finally said goodnight. Autumn checked on the other residents, made sure doors were locked, lights dimmed. Then she climbed to the 3rd floor to the small room she'd claimed for herself when staying over. From the window she could see the whole property. The restored house, the rose garden, the street where she'd walked away 15 years ago with nothing but survival instinct and a promise to the baby in her womb that they'd make it somehow. They had, against odds that should have crushed them, and now they were giving that chance to others. Autumn pulled out her phone, opened the photo album, found a picture from Vivian's funeral, her mother in the casket, finally at peace, finally done punishing herself. I forgive you, Mom. I really do. Not because you deserve it. Because I deserve to stop carrying anger. Deserves to use what you left me to build something good. The photo blurred through tears. Happy ones mostly. Grief mixed with relief, mixed with gratitude for the messy, complicated grace of second chances. She set the phone aside, pulled out a journal, started writing. December 20th, 2025. 1 year since I came home. The house is restored, the foundation is launched. 5 women are sleeping safely tonight. Bryn Thorne is here, which feels like the universe's idea of poetic justice. Cal's daughter finding refuge in the house his father tried to steal. Maybe that's what breaking cycles looks like, taking poison and transmuting it into medicine. Nola is applying to law schools, wants to fight for people like us. Like all of us who've been thrown away and told we don't matter. I think she'll be brilliant at it. West is talking about retiring now that the restoration is complete. But I think he'll keep showing up, teaching the women practical skills, being the grandfather none of them have. I miss Mom. Didn't expect that. Thought I'd feel only relief. But I miss the mother she was trying to become in those last months. The one who fought through pain to make things right. I hope wherever she is, she knows we won. Knows her suffering wasn't for nothing. Tomorrow we start the real work. Teaching job skills, providing childcare, connecting women with resources, building the support system I wish I'd had. It's terrifying. What if I fail them? What if this place can't help? But then I remember I was 15, pregnant, homeless. Everyone said I'd fail. I didn't, and neither will they. She closed the journal, turned off the light, lay in the narrow bed, listening to the house settle around her. Pipes humming, furnace clicking, sounds of life instead of decay. Sleep came easy for the first time in months. Morning brought chaos. 5 women, 4 children, 1 bathroom. Autumn navigated the disorder with coffee and patience, helping negotiate shower schedules and breakfast prep. Bryn burned toast. One of the toddlers spilled juice. The college student couldn't find her textbook. Normal problems. Blessedly normal. West arrived at 8 with pastries from the bakery, having anticipated the morning rush. He helped set up a kids' table, entertained toddlers while mothers ate. Nola came downstairs looking thoughtful. Mom, I've been thinking. What if I took a gap year, stayed here, helped run the house? I could still apply to schools for next year, but this feels important. Autumn wanted to say no. Wanted her daughter to grab every opportunity, chase every dream, not get pulled into service before she'd lived. But looking at Nola's face, she saw determination. Saw someone who'd found purpose. If that's what you want, but only if you're sure you've worked too hard to put college on hold. I'm sure. This matters, you matter, and I want to be part of building something instead of just benefiting from what you built. Autumn hugged her daughter. 16 years old, light years from the baby born in a shelter, proof that children of circumstance could choose their own paths. The doorbell rang. Autumn answered to find a woman in her 30s, professional clothes, nervous smile. I'm looking for Autumn Brennan. I'm Madison Cross. I heard about the foundation. I was wondering if you're taking volunteers. I'm a social worker. I'd like to help. We're absolutely taking volunteers. By noon, 3 more people had shown up offering services. A retired teacher who'd tutor, a nurse who'd provide basic health screenings, a lawyer who'd help with custody and support issues. The community was responding, showing up, offering what they could. At 2 p.m., a black SUV pulled up. Cal emerged looking uncertain, older somehow, the confidence gone. Autumn met him on the porch. You shouldn't be here. I know, but Bryn's mother called, said our daughter ran away. I've been looking everywhere. Then I saw the news coverage, saw her in the background of a photo. She's safe, that's all you need to know. Can I see her? Just talk to her. Bryn appeared in the doorway before Autumn could answer. I don't want to talk to you. Cal's face crumpled. Bryn, please, come home. We can work this out. Like you worked it out with Mom, with Nola. You don't work things out. You just leave when people become inconvenient. That's not fair, isn't it? You left Nola's mom when she was pregnant. You're never home for Mom and me. You care more about your developments than your family. So no, I'm not coming home. I'm staying here where people actually care. She went back inside door, closing firmly. Cal stood on the steps looking lost. Autumn almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She'll come around eventually, but you can't force it. You have to earn it. How do I fix this? Start by being present, by showing up, by doing the work instead of expecting forgiveness without effort. It took my mother 15 years. Might take you longer. He nodded slowly. The appeal was denied. Final. You won. I know. I'm closing down Silverstone Heights, selling off what's built, taking a loss, starting over somewhere else. Good luck with that. He turned to go, stopped. For what it's worth, I really am sorry about all of it. You deserved better. So did Bryn. So did everyone I've hurt. Apologies are easy. Atonement is hard. Figure out which one you're actually willing to do. He left. Autumn watched the SUV disappear down the street. Felt nothing much. The anger had burned out somewhere along the way, leaving only tired resolve to do better than the generation before. Months passed. Spring came, the rose garden exploded into color, 50 bushes blooming simultaneously in a riot of pink and red and white. Tourists started coming to see the house that had been saved from a developer. The story of David versus Goliath, single mother versus millionaire. Justice served despite impossible odds. Autumn hired staff, a house manager, 2 counselors, a child care coordinator. Brennan House grew from shelter to genuine support system. Bryn stayed, had her baby in May, a girl she named Hope, started online college classes, worked part-time at the front desk, slowly rebuilt her relationship with her mother, though Cal remained at arm's length. Nola deferred college, worked alongside Autumn, mother and daughter becoming partners, building something that would outlast them both. In December 2026, exactly 2 years after Autumn had returned to Birchwood Falls, they held a second anniversary celebration. Smaller than the opening, more intimate. 15 women had passed through Brennan House in the first year. 13 had moved on to stable housing jobs futures. 2 remained, still building strength for the next step. Autumn stood on the porch at sunset, watching snow fall exactly as it had 2 years ago. Everything and nothing had changed. The house was the same structure, but what happened inside was completely new. West appeared beside her, hair whiter, movements slower, but eyes still sharp. You did it, kid. Built something real, something lasting. We did it. Couldn't have happened without you. Nah, you'd have found a way. You always do. Nola and Bryn emerged, carrying Hope, bundled against the cold. 3 generations in a way. Autumn the survivor. Nola the daughter who'd grown up watching her mother fight. Bryn the next generation finding refuge, Hope the future. Mom, what are you thinking about? Autumn considered the question. Thought about Vivian watching from a window 15 years ago. Thought about walking away with nothing. Thought about the journey from that moment to this one. I'm thinking about how the worst thing that ever happened to me led to the best thing I ever built. How being thrown away taught me to catch others when they fall. How sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what actually matters. Nola shifted Hope to her other hip. You think Grandma Vivian knows what this became? I think she knows. I think she's proud. And I think she's finally at peace. They went inside where dinner waited, where women gathered around a table that had once hosted family who'd valued appearances over love. Now it hosted family chosen rather than inherited. Women supporting women. Mothers helping mothers, breaking cycles one meal at a time. After dinner, after everyone scattered to their evening routines, Autumn returned to the basement museum. Added a new entry to Thornton's journal, now preserved in a climate-controlled case. December 2026, 2 years since coming home. The house you built has become shelter for women you never met. Your silver bought their safety. Your legacy is their future. I hope that matters to you. It matters to us. I've learned something these past 2 years. Home isn't a place. It's people who refuse to abandon you. It's second chances given and received. It's choosing grace over grudges. This house was my prison, then my inheritance. Now it's my purpose. Thank you for hiding treasure where only someone searching would find it. Thank you for believing legacy mattered. You were right. She locked the museum, climbed the stairs one last time. The house settled around her with familiar creaks. Outside, snow continued falling, covering scars, making everything new. Autumn checked each room before bed. 5 women sleeping safely, 4 children dreaming whatever children dream. Nola in the room that had been Vivian's studying legal texts for the law school applications she'd finally submitted. Everything accounted for, everyone safe. In her own small room, Autumn pulled out the blue wool coat from the closet where it hung carefully preserved, ran her fingers over faded yarn, remembered being 15 in a coat her mother knitted with love before fear destroyed it. "We made it, Mom. We actually made it." She hung the coat back carefully. Tomorrow it would go in the museum with a plaque explaining its significance, the symbol of abandonment becoming symbol of reclamation. But tonight it was just a coat, a reminder of where she'd been and how far she'd come. Autumn climbed into bed, turned off the light, let exhaustion pull her towards sleep. Her last thought before darkness took her was gratitude for Vivian's confession, for West's loyalty, for Delilah's fierce advocacy, for Nola's unwavering support, for the women who'd trusted Brennan House with their survival, for the courage to forgive what couldn't be fixed and build something new from the wreckage. The house that had witnessed so much pain was now home to healing. And that was enough. More than enough, it was everything.